Hello and welcome to Double A Gaming. Today I want to start with a small little apology for how late our last video came out. This week's going to be filled with Rhystic studies, I have no doubt. There's a lot of announcements to be coming up, and I did want to be ready to do several videos about them as these announcements come out. And on top of that, the episode 3 with Oloro and the three-player game was significantly harder than I had originally anticipated, and we had done it pretty close to the deadline, only about 3 days to edit it. And if you know, you guys know that we both have full-time jobs, and we don't necessarily get like any kind of additional time to do this just because we do YouTube. So unfortunately, sometimes these things fall to the wayside, but we will keep our promise of doing things trying to do episodes every Thursday and not replacing them with additional filler crap, like real episodes um, for the entire season. With that aside, though, we are looking at huge announcements and huge changes to Magic set design coming forward. Mark Rosewater posted an article today talking about the new design of sets for the year, and these are some pretty significant changes. I think this is definitely an EDH channel, but I think this video and this announcement is particularly worth covering because this is going to change quite a bit for even us at this point. Uh, this is pretty big. So the first change that Mark Rosewater talked about was the fall, winter, and spring sets of each year will all be large sets now. There are no more small sets and there are no more blocks. Um, to put it in quick terms, or to better explain it, I believe the general design philosophy would be to have these sets be mostly standalone draft environment wise, but I guess they'll have some overlap. Like we could potentially see two large sets on Kaladesh, for example, both having energy in them, but not necessarily having much else in in relation to each other, or like mechanically overlapping with each other, except for just a few things like maybe energy or just the overall look of the world. Otherwise, these should mostly be all new worlds, or or mechanically different overlappings. So that's exciting. I like this change going forward a lot better than the small set system. Of course, I'm going to miss small sets in some capacity, but for the most part, what they've found out is necessarily true. Is that most people get real fatigued out and are just ready for the next set. The second change is core sets are back, and I know several friends who aren't going to be. I know several people who are not going to be excited for core sets coming back. Core sets were never their favorite, mostly due to their push towards newer players and their toning down of mechanics in general. And from what I've read, this should be the trend going forward. These should be half reprints, half new cards, which is good. I don't like core sets that are all reprints, but I've never experienced those. But since when I was little and I was playing Magic, they used to have that. It used to just be all reprints no matter what, and I think that sounds almost impossible to do. As lazy as you think it sounds, I couldn't imagine trying to design a set out of just reprints from like expansion blocks. But the core set is back, and it's supposed to have a focus towards newer players, which means probably not a lot of there's probably going to be some power, but there isn't going to be a lot of complexity. Um, think rares like Omniscience, where it's not necessarily bad or not. It's not necessarily bad, and it's not necessarily like easy to play, but it's not complex. You're just casting shit for free out of your hand. it's not asking a lot of you, and that's what we should probably see. Stuff like that. I don't think I think big dumb things like Titans are probably coming back. You know, Frost Titan, all that. Not necessarily as reprints, but stuff like that. Small cycles of really powerful stuff that isn't very hard to play. We won't be seeing like new mechanics and all that. But what core sets essentially allow is lands that don't make a lot of sense in terms of what they'd be printed in blocks. Stuff like Omniscience, which wouldn't necessarily make sense in any of these sets, where like the Gatewatch is fighting, you know, Nicobolus. You'd never want Jace casting spells for free because story-wise, you could just explain anything away when Omniscience is capable of one of the Gatewatch members. Stuff like that. So I think a lot of cool Commander stuff will come out of it. I'm hoping we don't see mythic reprints like Time Reversal, the Time Reversal fiasco. When I used to watch spoilers when I first started getting into Magic again in college, it was around M10, M11, M12, you know, those years was when I was most excited for these sets to come out. And I remember patiently waiting for these spoilers and getting hit by multiple reprints you know, the year after is something that I really hope they don't do going forward. Like, I hope they at least change things up enough that we're not getting fatigue from core sets again, but we'll see how they go with that. Third change is they're basically pulling the drag chute on most of these Gatewatch members and all this Gatewatch stuff in general. I think they'll still be in the story, but we will not be seeing 3 to 4 Gideons in one standard environment in a year anymore. Um, which doesn't necessarily matter for EDH, except for, you know, when you have people who are recently into the Super Friends archetype, and you've seen on the show, Kyle, our buddy Kyle plays Progenitus, and one of the biggest like deck construction challenges of playing Super Friends is a lot of these planeswalkers have the same planeswalker type, and as little as you ever have to worry about legendary rule or planeswalker or legendary rule in EDH, one of the big problems is all these planeswalkers essentially have legendary rule. So they get a lot less design space. I mean, like if you're running a dragon deck, you can run Bladewing the Risen and Rorik's Bladewing. You can run Nicobolus, his planeswalker, his other planeswalker. You, you can get away with running legendary creatures that are essentially the same character, but with planeswalkers you can't. So a lot of these people who have just gotten into the Super Friends archetype because of Attraction and stuff like that are stuck with like 4 different versions of Jace or some shit. They can't really figure out how to make that work in EDH without holding up dead cards in their hand, or not necessarily replacing them with anything different. You can't really get ahead when your planeswalkers will all blow each other up. So, or if you are ahead, then you have dead cards. So it's definitely a design problem for EDH, and I think that will solve it a lot, pulling back on the Gatewatch. I think it's a small step, but a good step. And then finally, the Masterpiece series will be reverted back to being fewer sets than normal, not necessarily in every set. I'm also okay with this. I liked the little break between Battle for Zendikar and Amonkhet with Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon being not having them in them, and I think that's also a small step but a good step forward. It definitely does pull back on reprints of stuff we'd never get in sets anyways, things like Consecrated Sphinx, which was a evocation, is good for EDH players. This isn't necessarily a good step for us, but I think it's overall good. Fatigue was going to set in eventually. There was going to be diminishing returns on people caring about these things if they happened every set. And especially after these Amonkhet ones, the evocations, there was a really good chance people were just not going to care going forward for Itlazan, or however the fuck you say that. I'm not trying it. Nope, 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 nope. Not gonna do it on camera. That set the set after Amonkhet was poised to essentially be, is this going to be as bad as the evocations? And that's never somewhere you want people's minds going for, an exciting new set. You never want them thinking, oh shit, well, is there not going to be any green cards this time around? Which is something I'm surprised they haven't talked about more or didn't realize would be a pretty big problem for people for the evocations. I still don't quite see why they did it, but it just seems like unnecessarily misbalanced. And I think big mistakes like that and the border design and stuff like that would definitely be like, hey, pull that back. We're not gonna do these unless they're really really important or they make a lot of sense, which I agree with. Other than that, I guess they're changing things behind the scenes for testing for standard, which is good if any of you guys play that, but you probably don't care if you watch our channel. You're probably just, for the most part, kitchen table EDH players like we are. So these changes are really big for us. As much as you may not care about standard, this is a pretty huge deal going forward. Small sets generally had a lot of the weird stuff or the like leftovers from the big set, and I actually found myself caring more about small sets in general for EDH and not so much for standard. So I think having them all in one spot and having the option to just do another big set on the same plane if they want to is overall going to just be better. For not letting anything slip through, for things like designing cycles of lands. Hopefully this new block construction, or if you can even call it block construction, just yearly setup will lead to less breaks in land cycles, which is huge for us. I still feel the pain every morning when my eyes open because we don't have Izzet dual lands or Golgari dual lands from these last few sets. No tangles and no cycles so far, and uh, enemy, uh, enemy colors are vastly missing those spots, and I hope that isn't a trend going forward. I really hope they pull that back because that's a big complaint of mine. I think with the large sets, that's something that could possibly be avoided a lot easier than trying to shove a land cycle into a small set. Even though I never saw the problem with that in general. Lands as rares is almost always a good thing to me personally. I haven't found a lot of examples where I find them uh, particularly abrasive because of that. I really can't think of anything. If you guys had problems with it, let me know, but I never did. I always like lands as rares, and I always like more rather than less. So that's my opinion on that. But I like the cycles to be finished, and I really hope they are. That's a big problem with me, and I hope they address it. But I've gone on too much of a tangent for that. I think that's about the whole of the announcements for what I've seen. It is currently 11:44, so there could be way more later on the day. This is supposed to be a big week of announcements. Whatever I can catch and I can record and I can put up, I will put up as soon as possible this week. This is Andy's editing week, behind the scenes, ooh. But which means I should be able to focus plenty on new Rhystic studies, especially when they work for EDH. Now, as far as Rhystic studies go, I wanted it to be more about general philosophy in EDH, things like designing or the design of new cards, the potentially deck text, potentially things like that. And I haven't gotten around to it. I've been a little slow to come out with it. I know I promised something about the mono green control deck, a deck tech on that, and I do want to do that. I'm gonna edit one of those, and I'm gonna edit that. I'm gonna do that before vacation next week that I'm going on. I have a 3-player to do. We're going to do a 2-player this week and a 3-player next week, and I'm going to try and get those 2 videos out. That's my goal. My goal is to do all these announcements, try and do a mono green control deck tech, and do the 3-player for next week and have all of that actually happen. And I think I can do it, and I want to try and do it because I love doing this. This is honestly some of the most fun I've had with Magic outside of just playing it in a long time. And I hope you guys enjoy what content we put out going forward. Leave any since this is particularly short and you guys can just listen to it and catch the end. Let us know if there's anything you have a problem with on the show besides my lands being in fucking front. That's not changing. It's never going to change. I grew up playing that way. I'm not going to change it unless I'm on camera for a pro tour. Then I might. Until then, you're just going to have to deal with it. That's just a part of our game. But other than that, let us know if there's anything you want to see changed. I know our lighting was a huge problem. You guys are going to see that in the next few 3 players and potentially this week's episode. But I think we're going to pick up new lighting very, very soon. Something within like at least 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to talk to Andy today about ordering that, actually. He should be giving me a call in a little bit. So we'll definitely change the lighting. I'm not putting my lands in back. And I will continue to mispronounce everything because I'm just horrible at it. But other than that, if you guys really want to see anything changed, we always do try and make things better. We've a lot of the changes we've made to the structure and to how we do these episodes was based off of YouTube comments. So anything you guys let us know, anything you guys want to see, for real, we'll work to try and make happen. And hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys are excited for what's coming forward as we are. And catch you guys next time. Double A Gaming signing out.